a woman vanished on her wedding day in 2009. 15 years later, her mother still receives white roses every June 15th, delivered by someone who pays in cash and leaves no name. March 2024. Elena Martinez died of a heart attack at age 67. Her nephew Carlos arrived from Phoenix to settle the estate. The house on Elmwood Drive sat empty for 3 weeks before Carlos found the time to drive down from Arizona. He expected the usual tasks of clearing out a lifetime of accumulated belongings. What he found in the basement changed everything. Behind the water heater, tucked into a corner that required crawling to reach, sat a cardboard box sealed with packing tape. The tape had yellowed with age. The box bore no markings, except for a date written in black marker. June 15th, 2010. Inside were 15 identical flower arrangements. Each bouquet had been carefully dried and preserved. White roses and baby's breath, the stems wrapped in tissue paper, the blooms still holding their shape after years of storage. Each arrangement came with a delivery receipt, stamped June 15th, spanning from 2010 to 2024. The receipts were organized chronologically, secured with a rubber band that had deteriorated with time. Carlos examined each slip of paper. The handwriting was identical. The timing was precise. The florist was always the same: Maple Street Flowers. Carlos called the florist listed on the receipts. The owner, Mrs. Chen, had operated the shop for 28 years. She remembered the orders immediately. The same caller every year for over a decade. The voice was female, middle-aged, speaking in careful, measured tones. The caller identified themselves only as a friend. The orders were placed by phone at exactly 9:15 a.m. each June 15th. Payment was made in cash at exactly 10:30 a.m. by different people who claimed to be acting on behalf of someone else. Mrs. Chen described the payment routine with remarkable detail. Each year, a different person would enter the shop at 10:30 a.m., carrying an envelope containing exact change. They would ask for the Martinez order and provide Elena's address. They would pay in cash and leave without providing additional information. Some were elderly women. Some were middle-aged men. Some appeared to be teenagers. None seemed to know why they were making the payment. The florist's records showed the precise timing had never varied, not once in 14 years. The caller always used the same words: white roses and baby's breath for Elena Martinez on Elmwood Drive. Delivery on June 15th at 2 p.m. The consistency suggested obsessive planning or profound ritual significance. Elena Martinez had never mentioned the flowers to Carlos. She had never mentioned them to anyone in the family. She had received them every year since 2010, 1 year after her daughter Claire vanished on what should have been her wedding day. She had carefully preserved each arrangement, documenting someone else's grief or guilt with methodical precision. The discovery raised questions that Carlos could not answer. Who had been sending flowers to his aunt for 14 years? Why had Elena never spoken about them? Why had she preserved them so carefully? And why had the deliveries continued even after Claire's case had gone cold? Carlos found additional items in the box: newspaper clippings about Claire's disappearance, all dated from June and July 2009. Police reports that Elena had requested through public records requests, maps of the area around Pine Ridge Overlook, marked with handwritten notes and possible search locations. Elena had been conducting her own investigation, parallel to the official police work. Among the papers was a notebook filled with Elena's handwriting. She had documented every interaction with law enforcement, every conversation with volunteers, every tip that had been called in to the police. The entries began on June 15th, 2009, and continued sporadically for years. The final entry was dated March 12th, 2024, 3 days before Elena's death. Still no word. The flowers will come again this year. I won't be here to receive them." Claire Martinez worked the night shift at Mercy General Hospital's pediatric wing. She lived in apartment 3B on Carson Street, in a complex built in the 1970s with thin walls and a parking lot that flooded during heavy rain. The building housed mostly young professionals and recent college graduates. Claire had lived there for 2 years, since finishing nursing school. Her Honda Civic sat in space 17, always perfectly aligned between the painted lines. She kept the car spotless inside and out, vacuuming the floor mats every Sunday morning. The car was a 2005 model, silver with gray interior, purchased used from a dealership in Salinas. She had saved for 8 months to afford the down payment. Her apartment reflected the same attention to detail. The kitchen counter held a single coffee mug, washed and dried after each use. The living room contained a couch purchased from a thrift store, a small television on a wooden stand, and a bookshelf filled with nursing textbooks arranged by subject. Medical reference books occupied the top shelf. Pediatric specialty texts filled the middle shelves. Nursing journals were stacked neatly on the bottom. Her bed was made with military precision, the comforter pulled tight enough to bounce a coin. The bedroom contained a dresser, a nightstand, and a small desk where she completed continuing education coursework. Her work uniforms hung in the closet, organized by color and freshness. She owned 7 sets of scrubs, enough for a full week without laundry. Claire's daily routine followed a predictable pattern. She worked 3 12-hour shifts per week, typically Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights. She arrived at the hospital at 6:45 p.m. and received report from the day shift nurse. She completed patient assessments, administered medications, and documented care throughout the night. She left the hospital at 7:30 a.m., drove home, showered, and slept until mid-afternoon. On her days off, she grocery shopped at the Safeway on Main Street, always using a handwritten list organized by store layout. She paid with cash and kept receipts in a small box on her kitchen counter. She did laundry at the complex's communal facility every Sunday morning using the same washing machine and dryer. She folded clothes immediately after drying, a habit learned from her mother. Claire called her mother every Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. The conversations followed a predictable pattern. Elena would ask about work, about the weather, about whether Claire was eating enough vegetables. Claire would provide brief updates delivered in the same calm tone she used with anxious parents at the hospital. She never complained about work stress or personal problems. The calls rarely lasted more than 15 minutes. Elena Martinez had raised Claire and her sister Jennifer as a single mother after their father died in a construction accident when Claire was 12. Elena worked as a secretary at the county courthouse, a position she held for 26 years until retirement. She had purchased the house on Elmwood Drive with life insurance money and a small settlement from her husband's employer. Claire met David Chen during his pediatric residency rotation through Mercy General. David was completing his final year of training at UC San Francisco, but spent 6 weeks at Mercy General as part of his rural medicine requirement. Their relationship developed over shared coffee breaks in the hospital cafeteria and late-night conversations during quiet periods on the ward. David was 28 years old, 2 years younger than Claire. He had grown up in Sacramento, the son of immigrants who operated a small restaurant. He had worked through college and medical school, accumulating student loans that would take decades to repay. He drove a Honda Accord that was older than Claire's Civic, but equally well-maintained. Their first conversation occurred during a code blue situation involving a 6-year-old patient with severe asthma. Claire had assisted David during the emergency, anticipating his needs and providing medications without being asked. After the patient stabilized, David thanked her for her professionalism. Claire responded that teamwork saved lives. They discovered they both preferred the night shift, Both drove compact cars. Both kept their living spaces precisely organized. Their relationship progressed slowly. David asked Claire to join him for coffee during their meal break. They discussed patient care, hospital policies, and their career goals. David planned to specialize in pediatric emergency medicine. Claire was considering graduate school for nurse practitioner certification. They discovered shared interests in hiking, cooking, and foreign films. David's residency at Mercy General ended in August 2008. He returned to San Francisco to complete his training. He and Claire maintained contact through phone calls and text messages. He visited Claire on weekends when his schedule permitted. She drove to San Francisco twice, staying in David's studio apartment near the medical center. David proposed on Christmas Eve 2008. He had driven to Monterey after finishing a 36-hour shift. Claire was working that night, and David waited in the hospital parking lot until her break. He presented a modest solitaire ring during a quiet moment in the medication room. Claire examined the ring under the fluorescent lights. The diamond was small but clear. The setting was simple white gold. She said yes without hesitation. They set the wedding date for June 15, 2009, which fell on Claire's deceased father's birthday. She wanted him present in some way. The ceremony was planned for 4 p.m. at St. Mary's Catholic Church, the same church where Claire had been baptized and confirmed. Father Rodriguez, who had known the Martinez family for 15 years, agreed to perform the ceremony. The reception would follow at the Riverside Community Center, a modest venue with capacity for 60 guests. Claire had requested a small gathering. The guest list included 43 people, family members, Claire's co-workers, David's residency classmates, and a few college friends. Elena Martinez handled most of the arrangements, consulting with Claire on major decisions, but managing details independently. Claire worked double shifts during the spring of 2009 to pay for wedding expenses. She had saved $3,000 for her dress, the photographer, and flowers. David contributed money for the reception venue and catering. They planned a honeymoon in Carmel, a weekend getaway they could afford on their combined income. The wedding dress was purchased at a discount bridal store in Salinas. Claire tried on 12 dresses before selecting a simple design with long sleeves and a modest neckline. The dress required minor alterations at the waist. Claire picked it up from the seamstress on June 10th, 5 days before the wedding. She hung it in her mother's bedroom closet, wrapped in plastic to prevent wrinkles. June 15th, 2009. Claire's alarm clock rang at 6:30 a.m. Her neighbor in apartment 3A, Mrs. Patterson, heard the shower running at 7:15. Water pipes in the building carried sound between units, and Mrs. Patterson had grown accustomed to the timing of Claire's morning routine. She noted the early shower because Claire typically bathed after returning from her night shift, not before leaving for special occasions. Claire dressed in jeans and a sweater, clothes she could easily remove when changing into her wedding dress. She packed a small overnight bag with items she would need for her honeymoon. She loaded the bag into her Honda Civic, along with a garment bag containing David's wedding gifts, cufflinks that had belonged to her father, and a watch she had purchased with her first nursing paycheck. She stopped at Starbucks on Main Street for coffee and a bagel. The barista, who recognized Claire as a regular customer, wished her good luck on her wedding day. Claire smiled and thanked her. She appeared calm and happy, showing no signs of anxiety or distress. She left the coffee shop at 8:35 a.m. and drove to her mother's house. Claire arrived at Elena Martinez's house at 8:45 a.m. Elena Martinez lived in a ranch-style home on Elmwood Drive, a quiet residential street 15 minutes from Claire's apartment. The house had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a driveway that could accommodate 4 cars. Elena had lived there for 22 years, since before Claire's father died. She had painted the exterior yellow in 2007 and planted rose bushes along the front walkway. The wedding photographer, Susan Walsh, arrived at 9:30 a.m. She was a professional who specialized in weddings and family portraits, recommended by the community center coordinator. She brought professional lighting equipment and multiple camera bodies. She had photographed over 300 weddings during her 15-year career and approached each event with systematic preparation. Susan documented Claire's morning routine with the methodical approach of someone who understood the importance of preserving memories. The early images showed Claire sitting at her mother's kitchen table, eating half a bagel with cream cheese. She drank 1 cup of coffee from a mug decorated with cartoon cats, a gift from her pediatric patients' families. Her expression appeared calm in every frame, though Susan later noted that Claire seemed more subdued than most brides. Elena Martinez prepared breakfast for the wedding party: bagels, fruit salad, and orange juice. She had decorated the kitchen with white streamers and balloons. Wedding cards from relatives and co-workers sat opened on the counter. The house smelled of coffee and Elena's signature cinnamon rolls, which she had baked at 5 a.m. At 11:30 a.m., the bridal party arrived. Claire's sister Jennifer drove from Sacramento, a 2-hour trip she had made the night before to avoid morning traffic. Her cousin Maria came from Stockton with her teenage daughter. Sarah Walsh, Claire's best friend from nursing school, lived 20 minutes away and brought professional makeup supplies borrowed from her sister-in-law. The 4 women transformed Elena Martinez's master bedroom into a bridal preparation suite. They moved furniture to create space for getting dressed. They hung Claire's wedding dress on the closet door and arranged her shoes, jewelry, and accessories on the dresser. The photographer documented each stage of the preparation process with professional attention to lighting and composition. Claire's wedding dress hung perfectly in the bedroom closet. She had purchased it at Maryland's Bridal Outlet, a discount store known for selling designer samples and discontinued styles. The dress was ivory silk, with long sleeves, a fitted bodice, and a chapel-length train. The design was simple and elegant, suitable for a church ceremony. The alterations had cost an additional $200. Her shoes were low-heeled pumps purchased at Nordstrom Rack. She had broken them in by wearing them around her apartment for 30 minutes each evening for 2 weeks. Her jewelry consisted of pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother and a necklace David had given her for Christmas. Her engagement ring had been cleaned and polished at the jewelry store the previous day. At 1:15 p.m., Claire told the group she needed fresh air. She had been sitting for 90 minutes while Sarah applied makeup and Jennifer styled her hair. The bedroom was warm from the lighting equipment and the presence of 5 people. Claire walked through the house to the front door, still wearing her makeup robe and slippers. Susan Walsh followed her outside and captured several photographs of Claire leaning against the Honda Civic parked in the driveway. Claire appeared to be looking toward the street, though no other people or vehicles were visible in the frame. The images showed Claire in profile, her face turned away from the camera. Something in her posture suggested she was waiting for someone or something, though she had not mentioned expecting any visitors. These were the last confirmed photographs of Claire Martinez. Susan Walsh returned to the house to pack her equipment before moving to the church for pre-ceremony setup. The bridal party continued their preparations, assuming Claire was taking a brief walk around the neighborhood. No one thought to check on her until Jennifer knocked on the front door at 2:45 p.m. At 2:45 p.m., Jennifer Martinez knocked on the front door. No answer. She called Claire's name through the door. No response. She tried the handle and found the door unlocked. The Honda Civic was gone from the driveway. Jennifer searched the house room by room, calling Claire's name with increasing urgency. Claire's purse remained on the kitchen counter, exactly where she had placed it that morning. Her cell phone sat charging on the nightstand in her mother's bedroom. Her wedding dress still hung undisturbed in the closet. Her makeup robe was missing, along with the slippers she had been wearing. Claire had vanished, taking only the clothes on her body and the car keys. Jennifer searched the house systematically. The bathroom showed no signs of recent use. The kitchen contained no dirty dishes beyond the breakfast items. The living room appeared exactly as it had that morning. The back door remained locked from the inside. The windows were closed and locked. There was no evidence of struggle or forced entry. David Chen arrived at 3:15 p.m. in his black suit, the same outfit he had planned to wear to the ceremony. He had driven from his apartment in San Francisco, a 3-hour trip that he had completed in 2.5 hours due to light traffic. He expected to escort Claire to the church for final preparations before the ceremony. Instead, he found the bridal party standing in the driveway, calling Claire's name and looking up and down the street as if she might appear at any moment. David asked where Claire had gone. No one could provide an answer. Jennifer explained that Claire had gone outside for fresh air and had not returned. David checked his phone for messages or missed calls. Claire had not attempted to contact him. He called her cell phone and heard it ringing inside the house. The group split up to search the neighborhood. Jennifer drove to Claire's apartment on Carson Street, thinking she might have gone home to retrieve something she had forgotten. Maria checked Mercy General Hospital, wondering if Claire had been called in for an emergency. Sarah called Claire's co-workers, who were planning to attend the wedding. David remained at the house, pacing the living room and making phone calls to anyone who might have seen Claire. Elena Martinez returned from the church at 3:45 p.m. She had gone to St. Mary's early to confirm final arrangements with Father Rodriguez and to place the wedding programs in the pews. She found her house filled with people searching for her daughter. The reality of Claire's disappearance struck her immediately. Claire would never leave voluntarily on her wedding day. Something had happened. At 4:20 p.m., 20 minutes after the ceremony should have begun, Jennifer Martinez called 911. The emergency dispatcher took detailed information about Claire's disappearance and dispatched a patrol unit to the house. Officer Martinez, no relation to the family, arrived at 4:35 p.m. and began taking statements from everyone present. The wedding guests remained at St. Mary's Catholic Church until 5 p.m., hoping Claire would appear with an explanation for her absence. Father Rodriguez led the group in prayer. Some guests returned home. Others joined the search effort that was beginning to organize around Elena Martinez's house. The Honda Civic was found at 6:45 p.m. by James Patterson, a jogger who ran the same 5-mile route every evening after work. Patterson knew the area well and immediately recognized that the car had not been there during his morning run. The car sat in the parking area at Pine Ridge Overlook, 32 miles from Elena Martinez's house. Pine Ridge Overlook was a scenic viewpoint popular with tourists and photographers. The overlook provided a 180-degree view of the Salinas Valley, with the Santa Lucia Mountains visible in the distance. The parking area accommodated 12 vehicles. A wooden railing separated visitors from a steep drop into the valley below. The site was managed by the County Parks Department and was officially closed from sunset to sunrise. The Honda Civic faced the valley, positioned as if someone had parked to enjoy the view. The engine was cold. The keys were missing. The driver's seat was adjusted to Claire's exact height, which David confirmed when he arrived at the scene. A half-empty water bottle sat in the cup holder, the same brand Claire typically bought at the hospital vending machine. The parking brake was engaged, suggesting deliberate parking rather than an emergency stop. Claire's makeup robe was folded neatly on the passenger seat. Her slippers were placed side by side on the floor mat behind the driver's seat. The car's interior was otherwise empty. Claire's wedding shoes, which had been in her car that morning, were missing. Detective Ray Morrison arrived at Pine Ridge Overlook at 7:30 p.m. He had worked missing persons cases for 12 years and approached each scene with methodical attention to detail. Morrison was 45 years old, a veteran of the sheriff's department who had investigated everything from runaway teenagers to suspected homicides. He understood that the first hours of a missing person case were critical for preserving evidence and establishing timeline. The Honda Civic showed no obvious signs of struggle. No blood, no torn clothing, no scattered belongings. The car appeared to have been abandoned with deliberate care. Morrison photographed the vehicle from multiple angles before authorizing its removal to the Sheriff's Department evidence facility. He documented the position of every item inside the car. The Overlook itself consisted of a gravel parking area and a wooden railing that separated visitors from a steep drop into the valley below. The terrain descended through dense forest for approximately 400 feet before reaching the Salinas River. The forest was thick with oak trees, manzanita bushes, and poison oak. Searching it would require significant resources and careful planning. Morrison examined the ground around the Honda Civic for footprints or other evidence. The gravel parking surface retained few clear impressions. He found tire tracks that appeared to match Claire's car, but could not definitively link them to her vehicle. He discovered no personal items that might have been dropped or discarded. The wooden railing showed no signs of damage or disturbance. The barrier was 4 feet high and solidly constructed. An adult could climb over it, but doing so would require deliberate effort. Morrison found no fibers, blood, or other evidence suggesting someone had crossed the railing. Morrison interviewed David Chen for 3 hours at the Sheriff's Department. David provided a detailed account of his relationship with Claire, their engagement, and the wedding preparations. He described Claire as stable, committed, and excited about their future together. He had no explanation for her disappearance. He had never heard Claire mention Pine Ridge Overlook, though he acknowledged they might have driven past it during scenic drives in the area. David submitted to a polygraph examination administered by a certified technician from the California Department of Justice. The examination lasted 2 hours and covered David's movements on June 15th, his relationship with Claire, and his knowledge of her disappearance. The results were inconclusive, showing stress responses that could indicate deception or could reflect the emotional trauma of losing his fiancée. David's whereabouts from 1:15 p.m. to 3:15 p.m. were verified by his apartment neighbor, Mrs. Kim, who had seen him through the window pacing his living room and making phone calls. David's phone records confirmed he had called Claire's cell phone 17 times during that period. None of the calls were answered. His credit card records showed no transactions between June 14th and June 16th. Morrison interviewed Claire's co-workers at Mercy General Hospital. The charge nurse, Patricia Williams, described Claire as reliable and punctual. In 3 years of employment, Claire had never missed a shift without calling. She had never expressed doubts about her engagement or her future with David. Her work performance was consistently excellent, and she was well liked by colleagues and patients' families. Dr. James Thompson, the attending physician who worked most closely with Claire, confirmed her professional demeanor and competence. He noted that Claire had requested June 15th and 16th off for her wedding and honeymoon 6 months in advance. She had arranged for another nurse to cover her shifts and had completed all required training updates before her time off. Claire's bank account showed normal activity leading up to her disappearance. Her last transaction was a withdrawal of $40 from an ATM at Safeway on June 14th. Her credit cards had not been used since that date. Her student loan payments were current. Her car insurance was paid through the end of the year. Her apartment rent was paid through July 1st. Nothing in her financial records suggested she was planning to disappear or that she was experiencing financial stress. Morrison examined Claire's apartment on Carson Street with her landlord's permission. The apartment was neat and organized, consistent with descriptions of Claire's personality. Her clothes were arranged by color in the closet. Her nursing textbooks were organized alphabetically. Her refrigerator contained fresh food purchased on June 13th. Her mail was current, with no overdue bills or unusual correspondence. The search for Claire Martinez lasted 18 days and involved multiple agencies. Monterey County Search and Rescue coordinated the effort with assistance from volunteer organizations and local law enforcement. The California Office of Emergency Services provided additional resources, including helicopter support and specialized search dogs. Teams on foot combed the forest below Pine Ridge Overlook, following grid patterns designed to cover every square foot of terrain. The search area encompassed 2,400 acres of rough country, including steep hillsides, dense vegetation, and unstable rock formations. Searchers worked in teams of 4, maintaining radio contact and documenting their progress on detailed maps. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging cameras swept the valley during daylight hours. The aircraft flew predetermined patterns at various altitudes, looking for heat signatures that might indicate a human presence. The thermal equipment could detect body heat through moderate vegetation, but was less effective in dense forest canopy. Search dogs from 3 counties participated in the effort. The dogs were trained to follow human scent trails and to detect decomposition. Handlers brought the dogs to Pine Ridge Overlook and allowed them to examine Claire's car and clothing items provided by her family. The dogs showed interest in several locations near the Overlook, but found no definitive evidence. Divers from the Monterey County Sheriff's Department searched the Salinas River at points where the current might have carried a body downstream from the Overlook area. The river was running high due to late spring snowmelt, creating dangerous conditions for diving operations. The water was cold and turbid, with visibility limited to less than 3 feet. The search expanded beyond the immediate area around Pine Ridge Overlook. Teams checked campgrounds, hiking trails, and remote areas throughout Monterey and San Benito counties. Volunteers posted flyers with Claire's photograph at gas stations, restaurants, tourist attractions, and truck stops along major highways. Local television stations provided extensive coverage of the search effort. Reporters filmed daily updates from Pine Ridge Overlook, interviewing Detective Morrison and Elena Martinez. The story was picked up by regional and national news outlets, generating tips from across California and neighboring states. The case generated 347 tips during the first month of the investigation. Callers reported possible sightings of Claire in various locations throughout Central California. A woman in Bakersfield claimed to have seen Claire at a gas station on June 16th. A truck driver reported picking up a hitchhiker matching her description on Highway 101 near San Luis Obispo. A campground host in Big Sur said a woman resembling Claire had registered for a single night under the name C. Davis. Detective Morrison investigated each lead personally, driving thousands of miles and interviewing dozens of witnesses. None of the tips produced credible evidence of Claire's whereabouts. Most sightings were cases of mistaken identity. Some callers appeared to be seeking attention or attempting to claim reward money offered by Elena Martinez. The investigation expanded to include examination of similar missing person cases throughout California. Morrison consulted with FBI behavioral analysts who specialized in unexplained disappearances. The profile they developed suggested that Claire's disappearance was either completely voluntary or the result of an opportunistic crime committed by someone she encountered at Pine Ridge Overlook. Elena Martinez held a candlelight vigil at St. Mary's Catholic Church on June 29th. 47 people attended, including Claire's co-workers, classmates from nursing school, and neighbors from Carson Street and Elmwood Drive. Father Rodriguez led prayers for Claire's safe return and for strength for her family during their ordeal. David Chen sat in the front row during the vigil. He had not shaved since the wedding day. He wore the same black suit he had planned to wear to the ceremony. The suit was wrinkled and showed signs of continuous wear. David's parents had driven down from Sacramento to support him, but he seemed detached from their efforts to comfort him. After the vigil, David drove to Pine Ridge Overlook and sat in his car until sunrise. He returned to the Overlook every night for a week, parking in the same spot where Claire's Honda Civic had been found. He would sit in his car for hours, occasionally walking to the railing to look down into the valley. On the 7th night, a park ranger asked him to leave. David complied without protest and never returned to the Overlook. The vigil marked the end of active community involvement in the search. Media attention began to fade as other stories took precedence. Volunteers gradually returned to their normal routines. The daily search operations were scaled back to weekend efforts by a core group of dedicated volunteers. Elena Martinez continued her own search efforts long after official operations ended. She drove to Pine Ridge Overlook twice weekly, walking the parking area and nearby trails, looking for any evidence that might have been missed. She interviewed hikers, photographers, and tourists who visited the Overlook regularly. She developed her own theories about what might have happened to Claire. Elena contacted psychics, private investigators, and retired law enforcement officers who offered to help with the case. She spent thousands of dollars on these consultations, most of which produced no useful information. She joined online support groups for families of missing persons and corresponded with other parents who had experienced similar losses. Detective Morrison retired in 2015 after 31 years with the Sheriff's Department. He had worked dozens of missing person cases during his career, but Claire Martinez's disappearance remained one of the most puzzling. Morrison admitted privately that he believed Claire had either committed suicide by jumping from Pine Ridge Overlook or had been the victim of foul play by someone she encountered there. Morrison transferred Claire's case files to Detective Sarah Kim, who had recently joined the Missing Persons Unit after working 5 years in narcotics. Kim was 32 years old, a graduate of UC Davis with a degree in criminology. She brought fresh perspective to cold cases and was known for her methodical approach to evidence review. Kim reviewed the case files twice yearly, looking for overlooked details or connections to other cases. She re-interviewed key witnesses and examined physical evidence with newer forensic techniques as they became available. She submitted DNA samples from Claire's personal items to national databases and cross-referenced the case with similar disappearances in other states. The Honda Civic was released to Elena Martinez in 2010 after all forensic testing was completed. Elena drove it home and parked it in her garage, where it remained for the next 14 years. She never drove the car again. The vehicle sat covered by a blue tarp, its battery disconnected, its tires gradually losing air. Elena paid for insurance and registration, but never explained why she kept a car she would never use. David Chen moved to Portland in 2011 after completing his residency. He became a pediatric surgeon at Oregon Health and Science University, specializing in trauma cases. He married a fellow physician, Dr. Lisa Wong, in 2016. He sent Elena Martinez a Christmas card every year until 2019. Brief messages expressing continued hope for Claire's return and updates on his life. The cards stopped arriving after 2019. Claire's apartment on Carson Street was cleared in August 2009. Elena Martinez packed her daughter's belongings into boxes and stored them in her spare bedroom. The room remained exactly as Elena had arranged it for 15 years. Claire's nursing textbooks sat stacked on the desk where Elena had placed them. Her stethoscope hung on the chair. Her work schedule from June 2009 remained taped to the wall. Elena visited the bedroom regularly, dusting Claire's belongings and rearranging items that had shifted slightly over time. She preserved the room as a shrine to her missing daughter, changing nothing except to replace light bulbs and repair minor damage. The bedroom door remained closed when visitors came to the house. The first flower delivery arrived on June 15, 2010. Elena Martinez opened the door at 2 p.m. to find a delivery driver holding white roses and baby's breath arranged in a clear glass vase. The arrangement was simple but elegant, the type typically chosen for weddings or memorials. No card accompanied the flowers. No sender information was provided. The delivery driver, a teenager working summer employment for Maple Street Flowers, said the order had been placed by phone that morning. The caller had provided Elena's address and specified delivery at 2 p.m. Payment had been made in cash by a woman who appeared to be in her 50s, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap. She had paid exact change and left the shop without providing additional information. Elena accepted the flowers and placed them on her kitchen table. She called Maple Street Flowers that afternoon to inquire about the sender. Mrs. Chen, the shop owner, could provide no additional details beyond what the delivery driver had already shared. The caller had identified themselves as a friend and had insisted on anonymity. Elena Martinez received the same arrangement every June 15th for the next 14 years. She never discovered who was sending them. She never told anyone about the deliveries, not even her son-in-law or her sister. The flowers became part of her private ritual of grief, a mystery she carried alone. Each year, Elena would preserve the arrangement by carefully drying the flowers and wrapping them in tissue paper. She stored them in the basement box with methodical precision, organizing them chronologically and including the delivery receipt with each bouquet. The ritual provided structure to her mourning and connection to whoever was commemorating her daughter's disappearance. Elena developed theories about the flower sender's identity. She suspected David Chen initially, thinking he might be honoring Claire's memory through anonymous gifts. She ruled him out after confirming his location in Portland and his lack of knowledge about local florists. She considered Claire's co-workers, former patients' families, and distant relatives who might feel guilty about some connection to Claire's disappearance. Elena hired a private investigator in 2016 to identify the flower sender. The investigator, a retired police detective named Frank Morales, spent 3 months tracking the orders and payments. He interviewed florist employees, reviewed security camera footage from nearby businesses, and attempted to trace the cash payments. He found no evidence pointing to a specific individual. In 2018, Robert Patterson, a hiker and amateur metal detector enthusiast, found a small metal object buried beneath leaves near the Salinas River, approximately half a mile downstream from Pine Ridge Overlook. Patterson was searching for historical artifacts and had permission from the landowner to use his metal detector in the area. The object was a house key attached to a keychain shaped like a stethoscope. The keychain was pewter, approximately 2 inches long, with RN engraved on the back. Patterson recognized it as medical-related and contacted the sheriff's department, thinking it might be connected to the missing nurse case he remembered from news coverage. Detective Kim responded to Patterson's call and examined the key and keychain. She immediately suspected a connection to Claire Martinez. Hospital employees often received stethoscope-shaped gifts from colleagues or patients' families. The key appeared to be a standard house key, brass-colored and showing signs of regular use. Elena Martinez was contacted and asked to examine the key. She identified it immediately as belonging to Claire. The keychain had been a graduation gift from Claire's nursing school class. Elena had a matching keychain that had been part of a set. Claire had carried the key to Elena's house on her keyring for years, using it when she visited or needed access to the house when Elena was working. Detective Kim ordered a comprehensive search of the area where the key was found. The team used metal detectors, ground-penetrating radar, and cadaver dogs to scan the riverbank and surrounding forest. They found no additional evidence. The search covered a radius of 200 yards from the discovery location and included areas both upstream and downstream from the site. Soil analysis indicated the key had been buried approximately 6 inches below the surface. The burial appeared to be recent, not from 2009. Organic matter around the key showed decomposition patterns consistent with placement within the previous 5 years. The key showed no signs of long-term exposure to weather or soil conditions. The discovery raised disturbing questions about timing. Claire's keys had been missing since her disappearance 9 years earlier. Someone had kept this specific key for nearly a decade. Why bury it in 2018